What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Five Pod, episode number 145. And ladies and gentlemen, it is officially NCAA tournament time. Thank you so much for being here. I'm, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello. Next to me, co-host Jake Copestick. And once again, as we were at the beginning of the season, but now as we are ready for March Madness, we have two Big Five teams in March Madness. One of those is the Penn Quakers, and with us, Penn sports reporter Conor Smith. Conor, thank you so much for taking some time to join us. You are the busiest man in University City these days, maybe even in the whole city. How's it going?
It's going great. I mean, it's I talked a little bit with you guys before when we got started reporting, but the campus environment is just electric, and it's not like anything I've ever seen being here at Penn. I'm a senior now, so I also think it's a little bit perfect that this is happening at the end of my Penn career. But there's just so many people talking about it, people that know that I'm a reporter that suddenly have questions and want to know what's going on with this team, and people who I don't even think know the rules of basketball asking me what TJ Power has, or if he has the flu, or what's going on with him. And I have to tell them I don't know about that, but I can tell them other things. It's just been like really insane to see just all the excitement around the program, excitement around the school. And of course that spreads to all the other teams at Penn as well. And I was just super excited to be here, and I didn't think we would be here, and look at us. So this is great.
It is great indeed. Cope, we got two Big Five teams in the NCAA tournament. How are you doing? And we'll talk about Penn, of course, first, but how are you doing?
Well, fellas, we broke the streak.
That's right.
Because
it's no longer our fault.
We finally have a Big Five team in the NCAA tournament, and now we have two. I was courtside at the A10 tournament, sitting next to Riley. We were watching that game. I was so I almost couldn't focus for the end of that game. I was so happy for them that they did that and how bonkers that game was. But Conor, thanks for joining us. This dude's a superstar. He's on TV. He's hot right now. I was happy we could get him. I just want him to start talking.
He's
so Twitter. Excited. This is awesome. I just want him to start talking.
and we're going to get right into it. So first things first, obviously, we can touch real quick on how Penn got there, which was from as an undermanned team, of course, because as we know, Ethan Roberts missed Ivy Madness with the recurrence of concussion symptoms, as you reported on, Conor. And they go up against Harvard. They're not favored to win the game. They win the game in overtime. And then they go up against Yale, who I think it was a 10-point spread that they were underdogs by. And that game went to overtime after two massive threes at the end by TJ Power, who ended up with 44 of Penn's 88 points in a win, sending them to the tournament as the 3 seed in the Ivy League. Conor, I don't even know what to say first, but I don't want to say how did this happen, because we saw it all happen, but did we think that this was even a possibility, especially with Roberts being sidelined for this tournament?
I wouldn't say it was not a possibility, but I didn't see them getting past Yale without Roberts. For the audience that doesn't know, Yale has put together a historic season in their own right. They were just eliminated from the NIT last night, but they put it together a historic season in their own right. They beat the record for amount of wins in the modern era for their program. Really just a complete team, like through the whole lineup. And Penn came in, like you said, Kyle, as 10-point underdogs. And TJ Power, the guy that was Duke gave up on, Virginia gave up on, showed up. And it's almost like, I mean, they call it Cinderella because it's like a storybook ending, but it's like amazing that happened and it kind of came into fruition. It's kind of what Fran's been talking about since the start of the year and into the off season when the TJ transfer was first announced, that this guy still has it. He just hasn't had the right situation, and he just needs a right situation. And you saw spurts of it throughout the season before really heating up in Ivy play. Because in Ivy play, he was the best player on the roster. Ethan Roberts was still coming back from concussion, still didn't really have a lot of looks against a lot of the Ivy teams. I think they really keyed in on him as well. and TJ was very consistent in Ivy play. But you saw it early. You saw it in that St. Joe's game where he won them that game. Ethan Roberts was the leading scorer that night, but TJ Power did win them that game. He hit shot after shot in that first half against the Hawks. And then that's kind of what you saw up in Ithaca versus Yale. He just couldn't miss. And I know everyone, and I had a lot of people texting me this, and a couple coaches, some other Ivy League coaches texting me that they could not believe that Yale did not foul when they were up 3 with 5 seconds to go in regulation and let TJ Power walk up the court again and just take a pull-up jumper to send it to OT. It was just really just an amazing performance to watch, and it really can't be understated how amazing that performance was. But also, in those games, you had AJ Levine go ballistic in the first game, make that first shot to send, because the first game also went to overtime versus the Crimson, also send that game to overtime. AJ Levine in the second game also had a very great game before being fouled out. Just a very, very emotional player. And we're going to talk a little bit because I think he is a key to beating Illinois. A very, very emotional player. And Cam Thrower, a guy who last year was hurt all year. Before that was just a rotational guy. One of the only guys really left actually the only senior left on Penn's roster that Donahue recruited, which is a great poll by Jeff Nyberg. Great poll. He wrote that article for the Philadelphia Inquirer. But really just even in like the lineup, like the only Donahue guy that's really getting minutes at all, besides like when Michelangelo Oberti makes an appearance or Augie Gerhardt, the starting center, really the only Donahue guy that's like scoring consistently. And he was very much the guy that was not in the rotation or, kind of seeped out of the rotation at the end of Ivy play. He was inserted back into the starting lineup, which he was before when Ethan Roberts was out. And he had 2 back-to-back crucial buckets in the last 3 minutes of that game as well. It's kind of just like everything seems to be coming together at the right time, but even without Ethan Roberts. So we'll talk about this, but he is, ruled out for Thursday's game. He is still, if a second game were to happen, he's still in consideration being played. That is what I'm being told and with what Fran is saying publicly to the reporters. So yeah, it just seems like everything's kind of coming together, and it's miraculous because Penn, in my opinion, doesn't have their best player.
I would jump in and say, yes, like that's a good point you bring up. They don't have the best player. TJ Power's the best one. It's like almost shocking. You look at the points per game and you're like, that guy doesn't average more. As great as Ethan Roberts is, like you see the 44 points. You saw the 38 and 12 he had against Dartmouth that really helped seal Ivy madness for him. He's going to need another one. If we want to, I'm going to segue us into the game here, Connor. Mm-hmm. I'll give my input, and then I'd love to hear you and your keys to the game and all the stats you're going to bring up. But they're probably going to need another 30 or 40 up out of TJ Power if they want to win this game. You were at the Penn State-Illinois game at the Palestra, correct?
No, I was not there, actually. I didn't make that game. Which is a bummer. I wish I was
there either. Like, but I thought I was going to see a sellout at the Palestra, and I was not unimpressed by Illinois because they were great. I was very unimpressed by Penn State filling, half the Palestra like it was a Penn game. But this team is big. Everybody is the green light to shoot. The same guy, Zvonimir Ivasic, who's going to be blocking shots in the paint at 7-2, is also going to he has the green light to pull the three. You look at Humrickhouse and Jake Davis. You had a good tweet that Jake Davis and Michael Zanoni played together at Mercer. These like big jumbo shooters. Jake Davis is he's the number 1 O rating in the country on KenPom. Why? Because he shoots threes. He's just a catch and shoot 3 guy, do the dirty work, pass here, rebound. There's so much size. There's so much skill multiple times a game. If it's Boswell and Wagler and Mirkovic and Andrei Stojakovic's son, Peja Stojakovic's son, Andre, there's so much size. This team is gigantic. And they're shooting, and the 3 or 4 guys at the time can handle it and pass the ball as well, draw a double team and kick. I'm so impressed by the amount of skill on this team. It's no wonder why they're one of the best offenses in the country, can spread you out even with 5 giant guys. Multiple guys can play, make, and handle the ball. There's so much feel and skill on this team. I'm blown away by it, and I just think that sheer size up front you get Augie Gerhardt in foul trouble early. Like this could potentially go off the rails if we're going to start to run out of bigs against literally the biggest team in the country average height wise.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on, like you really hit it on the head. I mean, a lot of people are calling this like, a lot of people are saying like David versus Goliath, but in this game, there's really two Goliaths, and it's the Ivicic twins. Like they, it's going to be a day for Augie Gerhardt. I do think he is one of the factors in this game. He really did hold his own very well against Townsend in that Yale game, who is the reigning Ivy League Player of the Year. And he is a guy who can and he's been matched up against big centers in the past, and he has held his own, but it's just going to be tough. Like you said, they stretch the floor. He's going to be chasing them around all night. And this team really, if you had to put together a modern basketball team, this is kind of the team you put together. It's going to be tough. We haven't even talked about it. And we'll talk about it. I'm sure we're going to talk about it now. We're going to talk about the top 10 pick in the draft coming up. So, I think just starting with, rebounding is going to be an issue when we talk about size. Rebounding has been an issue for Penn this entire season. You're going to see TJ crashing a lot of boards. He's a really big part of that rebounding game. I think that's one thing that's not talked about him enough. I think it's also just something that, as a 4 or 5 star, he can do that other maybe Ivy stretch fours aren't getting there as much. He's just all over the court. But we can keep going.
Yeah, why don't we just touch on Keaton Wagler then? Yeah. Dude had 46 points and 9 threes in a win at Mackey Arena this year. He's ridiculous. And in that game, he was filling in a point guard. Like he had to fill in and play a bit out of position with Kylan Boswell, who was hurt. And now Kylan Boswell's back. So now you have a senior point guard who's now back for Illinois going up against, the young AJ Levine here. And he is so good, and he is so good at getting by people, and he can shoot the three, and he can make tough shots. And in addition to that, like he's another guy with that skill. He's such a good passer as well, and you can really trust him with the ball in his hands to make decisions. Like they can put multiple guys on the floor at once that are not only giant but can do so many different things and can handle the ball and make and have the offensive end be unpredictable for them with just how many guys can handle it. Like he is so good. He has grown so much. He took on that responsibility at the point guard, and it was pretty seamless, and he continued to put up numbers. No wonder he was a second-team All-American. There's so much good that this guy can do offensively. And then there's the bigs. And then there's Stojakovic. And then there's David Mirkovic, even as a freshman, who I'm really impressed with. A giant 6'7", 6'8" forward who, again, can pass the ball, can move it around. There's so many threats. This is literally, I think it's number one on KenPom in offense. I think this is the best offense in the country. It's top 3. There's so many guys that can hurt you, that can do so many different things. I love the point you bring up, Connor, about this is how you build a modern basketball team, because it's totally positionless. So many guys with good feel, so many guys who can pass, so many guys who are not just on the court. Yes, they have Hummer Kaus and they have Jake Davis, who are most of the time going to be spotting up and shooting threes as guys get a piece of the paint and kick out. But the skill that this team has, how many different guys that can hurt you, forwards that can pass. You have Kylan Boswell, who's got plenty of tournament experience at the point guard position, who's now back. And on top of that, you have a lottery pick who continues to just play his way to All-American teams and potentially going higher in the draft. There is so many offensive threats that you can't. I'll put it this way. I think Illinois in this game, if they wanted to double TJ Power or throw as many different bodies as they could at him, they could probably do their best to say, we'll make somebody else beat you. You can't do that with this Illinois team.
Yeah. And you can't key on Keaton at all, because they're just going to punish that hell defense. They're just going to do that the entire game. So I really think a key on Penn's defense. It is AJ Levine has a way of making himself bigger. He is 6 foot, and I don't even know if he's really 6 foot. And that's not a shot. Long shot AJ listens to this, not a shot AJ. But when I'm interviewing him, he's like a little bit ahead of me, and I'm like 5'9" on a good day. But he does have a way of making himself bigger. He's a muscular 6 foot. He's extremely scrappy defender. If I had a vote, I would have ranked him pretty high in Ivy League Defensive Player of the Year just because of the steals that he came away with. And he can pluck big guys too. And he did that repeatedly in big situations this season. We saw it last year too. We saw it repeatedly last year, but he wasn't there all the way. It wasn't finite yet. And you can tell that Fran, another emotional guy, has gotten a lot out of AJ, and they have this chemistry where they can kind of go back and forth with each other. You know, I've not that many people really are going back and forth with Fran McCaffrey, but I've seen AJ do it. And it's, you know, and then in the St. Joe's game, he got in with Deuce Jones. Like, is a guy that has spark. I like to think of him as like a muscular TJ McConnell, and it's not just because he's a white guard. Just like the way that he gets in the backcourt is just it's something that Illinois, if you can just annoy these guys enough, as like silly as that sounds, and just get back there and just keep bothering them, you're going to come away with steals, and AJ is going to do that. I don't feel. It's hard to say you feel confident about anyone keying on Keaton as the number one defender, and like literally the best defenders in the country would be made silly by this guy. And I think AJ is the point of attack defender on him still. I think he's just the guy who can get up there. He can very much close out on threes and close out on shots. He has insane vertical. He can put down pretty big dunks on the other side of the ball. I do think Jay Jones, who's came into the backup point guard role this season with Dylan Williams being out for the year now on a red shirt. Jay Jones, who's a freshman guard, he's a lot more lengthier than AJ. I think he's going to see big minutes. He saw big minutes in the tournament. I think that's a guy that we're going to see a lot in the rotation, kind of just, you know, taking up room on the court and just trying to, you know, come away and pluck and annoy these guys. I think that's kind of just what has to happen.
I would throw Lucas Luce's name in there too. He's going to have to play on a Penn team that Fran will build way more athletic teams, because I felt like last year's Donahue team didn't have anybody.
Yeah,
Lucas Luth is going to have to play a lot of minutes in this game, and is probably going to be tasked with guarding a bunch of different people, and not just because he's such a good athlete, but man, the last, I'd say 2-3 weeks, he's been super, super good, even if he's not scoring the ball. So
and he's diving. He's diving for loose balls late in the game. He is a guy that Lucas Luth is like one of the more interesting guys on this team from a character standpoint. He's extremely funny guy. Extremely very much like a team guy, and he got limited minutes early in the season. You kind of saw him like ramp up, because when he was out on offense in the beginning of the season, he looked a little lost out there. And I think that's just, he came from the JUCO level. He won the JUCO championship last year. Just coming from the JUCO to the D1 level is like a crazy jump for anyone. But you could tell the defense and you could tell the athleticism, but he wasn't there on offense. He's come around a little bit. He had a huge corner three against Princeton that basically I think it tied up the game like with a minute left or something around that situation. But he's really played himself into the rotation as well. And I agree with you completely, is that like this team, like you said, the Donahue team didn't have any length. I always think of when Danny Wolf was drafted to the Nets this past year, my buddy Walker Carnathan at the Daily Pennsylvanian always said that we had George Smith guarding him. And George Smith, it was a very key rotationary guy and also a great guy. Shout out George Smith. But he's not an athletic guy who can like really, you know, keep up with some of the best players in the Ivy, some of the best players in NCAA. And I think Fran is bringing a lot of those guys in, especially in the recruiting, which we're not going to talk about now. But next year, Isaiah Carroll is going to be a name that you're going to hear a lot too.
Big Mike too.
Yeah.
We'll save.
Yes.
I mean,
we'll save that.
This dude could talk about Penn basketball till the sun comes up. This is awesome.
Yeah. This is great.
Can I ask this now, Connor? Can we get your prediction for tomorrow? After all that, we think we've broken down everything we have to. Your prediction is what?
I think Illinois wins. I don't think. I'm sorry if I built it. I do think Illinois wins. I think this is just a situation where Penn is playing against what I believe is the best number 3 in the country. Best number 3 seed in the country, which also is extremely interesting because the ESPN bracket challenge, Penn is the most popular 13 seed pick so far. Just to put that out there. So if the upset does happen, I'm sure that ESPN is going to have that everywhere, that, you know, the people were right. Okay. But I think this is just a situation where Penn has kind of rode this high into March Madness, and now it's going to kind of just, end with the last game. Especially, I don't really know the situation with TJ's illness that came out today. I have absolute as many details as anyone else has about that. If it's, a light cough or something like a fever, people are throwing out flu game a little prematurely, in my opinion. But, if it happens, I mean, I picked them against Harvard and I picked them against Yale. So maybe I'm wrong 3 times in a row. But yeah.
I too am going to pick Illinois here. Look, It's all about matchups. It's all about matchups. I mean, how many teams that you're like, oh, this team's lucky, this team's not good, and they make a run. It's all about matchups. That being said, this Illinois team is just a bad matchup for anybody with all the traits and the size and the length and the skill and ability they have. It's just a bad matchup. It is what it is, and you bring up a good point that Augie, like he held his ground against Townsend on Sunday, but they gave him a problem earlier in the year. And then even though he didn't play, they still lost that game at Yale. I remember that game when they had to play LaSalle, and LaSalle's just, want to and physical, just toughness. It took them a half to get acclimated to the game. And if that's going to be the case, and they're bothered by a little bit of size and good big men, well, I mean, that's almost his whole team. Yeah. I just think that this Illinois team, again, it would be a nightmare for anybody to play. Quite frankly, I think they can go on a deep run here, and they can be one of Brad Underwood's best teams he's ever had. This is just a tough matchup with where Penn is at right now, with where Illinois is at right now, especially if you have a TJ Power that's not at 100%. They don't have Ethan Roberts. I'm going to take Illinois. I see that spread is pretty big. I won't touch it because I will be rooting for Penn tomorrow. Because I'll be even if I pick against them in my bracket, I will be rooting for the Big 5 teams tomorrow. But this Illinois team is very good. They can make it to the Final Four. There's not a doubt in my mind.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, when I saw the matchup come out, I was very disheartened because I would have loved to have picked Penn or seen them actually. I don't want to say they won't be competitive tomorrow, but it's going to be tough. I mean, like we've all mentioned, that they're a massive team, and Penn is not that, and it's going to be tough. I do think Illinois will win pretty handily, and I actually do have Illinois in my Final Four, which we'll probably get to later in this episode. It's just a really good team, and it's a really, really tall team, so it's going to be hard for them. But all things are, everybody has a plan until TJ Power puts 40 on you, and then we'll see what happens. But hopefully he's healthy and ready to go for that one. Connor, one more thing from us, though, and I want to ask you just about, the general excitement about Penn being in the tournament. Obviously, first time since 2018, first time with in his first year with Fran McCaffrey being back at the helm at his alma mater. You're a senior on campus. What's the vibe like for a team who hasn't been there in a little bit to get back to the tournament and win the Ivy Madness the way that they did too?
Yeah, I know. I like, let me just collect my thoughts for a second. I think this is such a loaded question because I feel like it's 4 years in the making in a way. I think the last couple of weeks, there's been a ton of dialogue around what's going wrong with the Big Five. And I agree with a lot of the points being made in general. And I thought Mike Sealski's column for the Philadelphia Inquirer was incredible about it. Definitely a deep dive history that I was not aware of a lot of that. But winning does solve everything. And I think that is something that is being left out of the equation. And sometimes teams in March go on runs that they shouldn't be going on, and it generates excitement. If you told me as a sophomore that people would be coming up to me and asking if I want to go to their watch party for Penn men's basketball in the tournament, I wouldn't even be able to fathom that. It's insane that that's happening. It's insane that there's going to be a line outside of Smokey Joe's to watch this game on tomorrow night. And it's just, there's so much excitement on campus. I mean, I'm not going to say the class, but I have a class with 5 of these players, and the professor shouted them out in the beginning of class today. There's a little bit of applause. It's just something it's miraculous. It really is. And it's just like super exciting for the whole Penn community. And it really gets me excited about Penn athletics, about Penn sports, and about most of all Penn basketball, because that's the lifeblood of this university. It's what the sports programs were built on. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
I mean, I don't think anybody could have said it any better. I mean, we're also not on campus. You are, and
Yeah.
you've experienced some highs and lows in these last 4 years, but
Yep.
this is about as high as it's going to get for
Yeah.
athletics on campus. So awesome to hear that, and as it should be, that excitement is at an all-time high. All right, Connor, any final thoughts before we let you go?
Well, I just one more note. I'm very, very surprised on how well the players are taking all this attention, because I don't know if I'm taking this attention well. They seem like they all have a great head on their shoulders. I'm sure that's Fran getting them ready in a way that, I don't think really any other coach that we could have hired or Penn could have hired. Shouldn't say we. Penn could have hired, could get them ready for. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Fair enough. All right, Connor, thank you so much for joining us. Love talking Penn basketball with you, especially as they get ready for their first tournament games in 2018 against Illinois on Thursday. Hopefully it'll be a good one, but exciting nonetheless that they got there. And wherever you're going to be watching it, hopefully it's a good experience for you as well.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Connor.
Appreciate you, Connor.
Yeah.
All right, that was Conor Smith, Penn sports reporter. Cope, as you called him before we got on here, a lightning rod. I mean, he's electric. He's the man. The fact that he's getting impersonated on Twitter as a college senior, as a reporter for Penn basketball, it's impressive. You got to mean something to get impersonated on Twitter, Cope. So, excuse me. Anyway, we're gonna move on from Penn. We talked about Penn a lot, obviously, and they're a very fun story. But there's another team, Cope, that's in the tournament in the Big Five, and that would be the Villanova Wildcats, the team that we all knew was going to be in the tournament. We all knew they were going to get probably an 8 seed, which they did. Who their opponent was, well, obviously that was to be determined on Selection Sunday, and they were given Utah State in San Diego on Friday. So we're going to dive right in, Cope, because you love Mountain West basketball. I also really like Mountain West basketball, but you're staying up to watch it usually later than I am. I get up a little earlier than you to go to work, so I can't stay up quite as late as you can. But you know about this Utah State team. I mean, they've been the best team in the Mountain West all year. A one bid Mountain West, which hasn't happened in a while. I mean, it's at least a 3-bid league. I think one year it was upwards of 6 a couple of years ago.
Yeah, got 6 teams in a couple of years ago.
They have a history of not doing well in the tournament, though, Cope, which is the thing, except for San Diego State. So this should be an interesting matchup. Seemingly a pretty even matchup. I mean, KenPom, just for starters, has this game as a 75-74 Villanova loss. In terms of their rankings, Utah State's 29th, Villanova's 33rd. They're seemingly pretty evenly matched teams. Why don't we dive in a little further, though, Cope? Because obviously things may not seem as they are. Villanova's down. They're starting 4 in Matt Hodge. Utah State, going on a run and winning their conference tournament. Villanova falling in their first conference tournament game. There's a lot going on here. Cope, I want to ask you about Utah State first, because obviously our listeners and we know a lot about this Villanova team. We've been covering them all season. We haven't been covering Utah State. So, Cope, tell me about some of the guys in this Utah State team that could give Villanova trouble on Friday.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the guard trio here. Well, actually, Kyle, first of all, I'd like to tell you about how well they're coached by Mr. Jared Calhoun in his second year. 2 straight trips to the NCAA tournament, and basically what's the VCU of the West. Doesn't matter who's at the helm at the coach. They're going to have a good team. They're going to give themselves a chance in March Madness. And in year number 2 under Jared Calhoun, not only are they headed to the tournament, they did the double. They won the Mountain West regular season. They won the Mountain West tournament. They finished 28-6, Kyle. Me thinks that's a team that deserves better than a 9 seed. A team that beat VCU, beat New Mexico twice, beat San Diego State twice, including the Mountain West championship game. Me thinks that's better than a 9 seed. So I think, first of all, this is an underseeded team that not only does KenPom have as a Utah State win, but all the books have favored. I actually do think that that's accurate. I think you could have flipped the Nova being the 9, Utah State being the 8, would have been maybe a little bit better, but this is a really good team. They're experienced, excellent trio of guards. The Mountain West Player of the Year in Mason Falslev averages over 2 steals a game, can score it, can shoot it, over a 40% 3-point shooter. And MJ Collins, the transfer from Vanderbilt, is really the guy that's going to be able to hurt him. He's the leading scorer on this team, despite Mason Falslev being the Player of the Year. Averages over 17 points a game, almost 37% from the 3-point line. And then their other older point guard, Drake Allen, who I think actually just had a child and he's like 24, 25 years old. This is a real old guy coming off the bench. The three of them do not turn the ball over. This is an experienced group. This is a group that's top 40, Kyle, nationally in assist to field goals made. They spread the ball very well. They get into the paint. They kick it out, shoot the three pretty well. And these three guys, Kyle, just experienced. 19th nationally in D1 experience. 59th in minutes continuity. This is a group that has been together, even with MJ Collins coming in. This is a group that Jared Calhoun was able to retain a good chunk of coming into his second year. 72nd in bench minutes. They're going to play a deep team, but it really comes down to these three guards and their ability to not only shoot and score, distribute, Kyle, and not turn the ball over. That's really what it comes down to with this team. It's an excellent guard trio. Very smart team, play very well offensively, and coached very well by a guy who could be on the jump seat, who I believe turned down. Reports were that he turned down the Kansas State job. I think potentially that Cincinnati job could get a look from Jared Calhoun, but it's a really good team. MJ Collins, Mason Falslev, the best scoring duo in the Mountain West this year, Kyle. The guards are very, very good. Not only NCAA tournament experience, you have power conference experience with MJ Collins, but that's really where it starts. They have a really good 6-man in Carson Templin, 9 points a game off the bench, gives him an energizer bunny big coming off the bench for him. But this is a good team, Kyle. I really think Utah State's going to win. They are absolutely live in this game. I thought they were disrespected by the committee. Very well coached, experienced. This is a very, very good group, Kyle, for me to be earning a 9 seed.
Yeah, I think in a different year in the Mountain West, they probably would have gotten a 7 or 6, or an 8 even, just based off how good that league usually is. I think just because it was a down year, maybe that they weren't quite as respected as maybe they should have been. And, their metrics are pretty good, though. I definitely don't think they were deserving of a 9 seed, like you said. Yeah, Cope. I mean, the guard trio is definitely something to watch, especially because Villanova's got guards too, if you haven't heard. Caden Lewis, Tyler Perkins, Bryce Lindsey, Devin Askew coming off the bench. It's going to be a battle of the guards in this game, and everyone always says, and it is true, that guards win in March. Can't remember the last time a team won a national championship that didn't have some type of, experienced guard play. Um, it's gonna be a huge factor in this one. Now, which guards win out? That remains to be seen. But there's other factors here as well. Obviously, one of the things that you mentioned, which I think is huge, is the bench minutes. This is a much deeper team than Villanova is. Like you said, Cope, 72nd nationally in bench minutes. Villanova's 259th. So that's going to be something that, it doesn't always work that way because obviously if your starters are playing, they got to be pretty good, but especially at this stage in the season. But fatigue factors as well, especially for a team in Villanova flying across the country. Utah State has to go a little far, not nearly as far as Villanova coming from the Philadelphia area. So this is something to consider here. Unfortunately, I think tend to agree, Cope, with Ken Pom, and you can agree or disagree with me in this one, but I did pick Utah State in this game. Um, I just think for all those factors that we just mentioned with the trio of guards that they have, and again, Villanova has good ones too, but you take the bench in consideration, you take the travel in consideration. And I also just think that Utah State's offense is probably just a little bit better than Villanova's defenses in this game. So neither team are great on the free throw line either, which I think kind of cancels out. That's one thing, and I can't believe we're saying this about a Villanova team in March, Cope, but this is a team that struggles from the free throw line. Has never happened in quite some time. But I lean Utah State here, and I am curious to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna lean them as well. Boards is gonna come into effect too, because not that this is a massive team. Like, how many times when we had Connor on did we talk about the size that that this Utah or that Illinois had. And it's not like that for Utah State. They don't have quite the 7'1", 7'2" size that an Illinois has, but they have a stockpile of 6'9", 6'10" guys here. They have multiple bigs they can throw at you, potentially play two at the same time, and just have guys that can absorb foul trouble. They got a good performance from Gary Clark when they beat San Diego State on Saturday, and then how about just 2 days prior at the Big East tournament that you were at, when Villanova has to make a decision because we haven't seen the Twin Tower lineup here of Braden Pierce and Duke Brennan out there at the same time.
They got demolished on the boards by Georgetown.
And it's
because they shouldn't be.
Georgetown's got some size, they got some athletes. And when Malachi Palmer is not in there, Kevin Willard has to make a decision. The decision he's made is to go small and play before guards because they just haven't played that lineup. Maybe it's a wrinkle you can throw at him, but we just haven't seen Duke Brennan and Braden Pierce out there at the same time. So if they go small, that will be advantage Utah State, which is a top 100 rebounding unit, was a good rebounding unit in the Mountain West. It's just not a good defensive rebounding team for Nova. That was a 46-25 advantage for Georgetown. That's how they controlled that game, and they won it. They got beat horribly on the glass. I'm not saying this Utah State team would do the same thing, but it has to worry you if you're Villanova. God forbid a Duke Brennan gets in foul trouble, Malachi Palmer gets in foul trouble, or just the fact that if you're not going to play Malachi Palmer for 40 minutes, well, the only lineup we've seen deployed is when they go small. We have not seen the two bigs in there yet. That could be something they have to give up. Been an issue all year. It's exacerbated a little bit more now that you don't have your one true four-man. Malachi Palmer can totally play that position, but Hodge is a better three-point shooter, taller, and had been getting acclimated to the physicality of the Big East. You just don't have that now with a guy, Malachi Palmer, who now you're demanding has to play over 30 minutes a game, where he was playing a role and playing some spottier minutes early in the season. Could come down to rebounding, but to your point, Kyle, not only is Villanova not good at shooting free throws, somehow, some way they got matched up with a team that's even worse than them. Could come down to it.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah. Pretty crazy. But no, Cope, that's something that Coach Willard mentioned in his press conference after that Georgetown game too, is that when Malachi Palmer comes off the floor, they're kind of, I guess, lost in a way. Like they don't have a true identity and a true replacement, because obviously Malachi Palmer was the backup four. You lose your four in Matt Hodge, and it kind of throws things in disarray for a team that wasn't deep to begin with. And he mentioned that that's something that they're going to have to figure out before the NCAA tournament. Obviously, they didn't know they're going to be matched up with Utah State, which, they have some size too. So it's going to be a challenge. I mean, anyone they face really is going to be a challenge, not having your starting four. But do they continue to go small? Do they try out the two big lineup with Pierce and Brennan? I don't know what the right answer is. I think if you were to ask me in general in like basketball philosophy terms, I would say the small lineup, but it hasn't worked. And they're going to keep getting dominated, on the boards if they continue to go this way, especially with a team that has some size. So we'll see. I just with the injuries and honestly, the way that this team just hasn't really beaten a team better than them all season, except for maybe now Wisconsin. That Wisconsin win looks even more incredible as the season's going on, because Wisconsin's impressive. They could make a little bit of a run, which maybe we'll get into in a second. But that's their best win of the season. But they played St. John's twice. They lost. They played UConn twice. They lost. Obviously, they lost to BYU opening night. They got blown out by Michigan. Their only loss to a team worse than them was Creighton, and then until Georgetown. But this is just a team that hasn't gone to the level of other teams that they're the best team that they really have beaten besides Wisconsin all year was Seton Hall twice. And Seton Hall didn't make the NCAA tournament. So we'll see. It will be a close game, I think, but I do think Utah State ultimately wins in the end. But Cope, that's a pretty good segue here, because we have a bracket to talk about. And Cope, I know you very, very well, and obviously I know myself very, very well. And there is nothing better than Sunday night after the selection show. You get some dinner, you print out a bracket, you sit down with an empty fresh bracket, and you go to work. Didn't quite happen quite that way for me this year. I got home a little late and filled it out kind of late night for me, but still an incredible feeling. And we're gonna go over it right now a little bit. We're not gonna go crazy in depth. Obviously, this isn't like our past Brackets Eve episodes. We kind of both didn't really have a ton of bandwidth and time this year to get that done. Hopefully, we'll be able to bring it back when things calm down a little bit at some point. This was a little crazy year for both of us, but we're definitely gonna go over a little bit right now. Besides the Big Five teams, which also is another factor too, is that we haven't had a Big Five team to talk about in any of the years leading up to this. So I'm glad we were able to do that on this episode. But Cope. Let's start in the first round. Obviously, in the first round, the thing that people talk about the most is potential upsets, potential Cinderellas. Give me one or two that you really, really like, and I'll do the same.
I don't like that they're being so much trendy. On the left side, I have South Florida and VCU, which I feel like are certainly the most trendy of the bunch. I'll give you another one, though. I'll go to the right side, and I'm going to give you Hofstra. I'm going to give you Hofstra with the Aiden Holloway news at Alabama that they're losing their second leading scorer who was arrested on possession of over 2 pounds of marijuana. He's not going to make the trip to Tampa with the team. And I see that there's the bad juju around the team. I'd love to. You're going to talk about your bracket primer after I'm done and some of the stats and the trends that you see. But, I said this on the radio when I was on WIP Sunday. I just don't like the way that Alabama plays in general. I don't like that high of volatility. I don't like the idea that we're relying on gunning threes and making shots for 6 straight games against really, really good opponents, no matter who you play in the first round. They played close against Robert Morris last year. I know they made a run to the Elite Eight. They made every shot against BYU, and then they could not make one against Duke. Also credit Duke because that team was very good. Then they get to the Final Four a couple years ago, and they just get halted by a very, very good Connecticut team. I'm almost like contradicting myself here because they ran into teams that you can't be like, oh, how could you lose to them? But just the idea of the way they play, and they'll drop games. They just lost to Georgia, who I know is an 8 seed, but just the way that they play with. I don't think that's sustainable. I think that playing that style is the most conducive to an upset when you're relying on making shots and gunning threes very quickly in the clock. So I went Hofstra with the bad juju around the team, with Aiden Holloway not going to be there. All of a sudden, you're without your second leading scorer. Yes, they still have an incredible player in LeBaron Philon who averages over 20 points a game, but give me Speedy. I'll take Speedy Claxton, the most electric guard duo in the low to mid-major ranks. Preston Edmeade and Cruz Davis. Cruz Davis is going to make himself a lot of money. He can score from every level of the court. Preston Edmeade hit that giant shot in the CAA semis against Towson. He has been incredible as a freshman and as a local kid as well to be lighting it up with Hofstra. So love that guard duo. Huge fan of German Plotnikov. Ultimate connector, can shoot the three, can do a bunch of different things for them. And then inside with Victory on Uentu with Silas Sunday, they have size to go up against Taylor Bowen and Aiden Sherrill and the crop that Alabama has up front. I will let you discuss South Florida or VCU because I feel like those are the most trendy. I gave Hofstra as, I guess, more of a shot in the dark, but I do feel a little bit better. I've seen that line go down without Aiden Holloway.
Cope, I'll touch on that real quick because first of all, I picked Hofstra before Aiden Holloway got arrested for having 2 pounds of weed. I thought just with Preston Edmeade and Cruz Davis, like you mentioned, matching up against what I thought was him and LeBaron Philon. I mean, obviously the Alabama duo is the more talented one, but guards win in March, and having two duos like that could make for some incredible basketball. And I think there was a chance that Hofstra was going to win anyway. And then obviously Aiden Holloway got suspended. It makes me even more confident that Hofstra is going to beat Alabama. When that popped up on the selection show, I started clapping. I feel, and we've watched the selection show together. I feel like every year there's one matchup where a double-digit seed's playing a high major or a high-seeded team, and it's just like that. That's the spot. A few years ago, it was Furman against Virginia. Obviously, we saw how that one ended. Yeah, I think it's a really good matchup for them. And not only that, Cope, I picked Hofstra to beat Texas Tech in the second round. I have Hofstra going to my Sweet 16, which is very bold. I wouldn't recommend everybody doing that, but that's how confident I am in Cruz Davis, in Preston Edmeade, and Coach Speedy Claxton. I really like this team. And I'm happy that they won the CAA tournament. Of course, I would have been even happier if Drexel won the CAA tournament, but if there's any other team that would have that I think I would have loved to have picked in this tournament, obviously it's Hofstra. You mentioned South Florida, you mentioned VCU. I mean, we've talked about VCU a bunch on this podcast, obviously. Beat St. Joe's in the A10 semis, ended up beating Dayton in the A10 final. This team's, this is a really, really good team coached by Phil Martelli Jr. And they're going up against North Carolina team that even with Caleb Wilson, I thought was a bit overrated, a bit overseeded, and they lost their top five pick to injury. So I think these are two teams that are probably around the same rank and they're five seed lines away from each other. So in those spots, guys, like you pick the lower seeded team because a ton of people are going to be just seeing North Carolina in a six next to their name against a school that maybe they haven't heard of. And I mean, maybe people have heard of VCU by now, but if you're a casual, I don't know. And they're going to pick the North Carolina because they're one of the best programs of all time. Don't do that. Pick VCU, even if they don't win. It's a right leverage play kind of deal here. So I think that, and then South Florida against Louisville, Mikel Brown was ruled out. Although he was warming up in their open practice, I don't really know what's going on there, but ruled out again with back problems that he's been dealing with this season. I believe he's missed a total of 10 games, 12 games, something like that, this season due to a lingering back issue. So there was that, but then also like this USF team is loaded with guys who have played at damn near every level. Wes Ennis, you've got American Player of the Year Isaiah Nelson, you got Joseph Pinion, obviously Brian Hodgson being a star coach in this conference, and I think he's already getting high major looks. I mean, there's reports that he turned down the Syracuse job. I think Providence could be in his view there if he wants it, but maybe he'll pull a Josh Schertz and he'll stay at the school that he's at. And, for the American Conference and Temple being in it, I hope he does because that, will help build up the public profile of this conference. But I think this is a team also that it's one of those situations where I think the teams are probably a little bit closer than their seed line says. Even though Louisville's predictive metrics and underlying stats are good, they are another team, and maybe even worse at this than Villanova is, where they haven't beaten anybody. I think the best team they've beaten all year is Miami, who's in the tournament. Obviously, I mean they're 7th seed themselves, but uh, they played an ACC that's not great, but it's better than it was last year. Having a 3 seed in Virginia, they're in it. NC State obviously just lost the other night, but they were an 11 seed in Miami. Um, there's not necessarily slouches in this conference, and they were only really able to beat Miami. So SMU too.
They had some
I
trouble with SMU last week. I was watching
they
that game.
did.
That game went down to the wire. Like I know SMU was in. That win would have put them in if they hadn't. They had trouble toward the end there without Mikel Brown.
Yeah,
I
and
think this
obviously
is
SMU still got in, but
yeah.
to the first four. But yeah, I'm not confident, and I think USF will win this game. Now I have both those teams losing in the second round. VCU would play Illinois if they beat Penn, which as we were just talking about, we would expect them to, and then USF would play Michigan State, which I think would be a little bit closer than the other matchup, but ultimately I think both the high major teams win there. But still, those are some I'm looking at there. Cope. Couple more topics now to hit on with the bracket. First, if there are any Cinderellas, I don't know if is a great word for it, but is there any underrated teams on lower-ish seed lines that you have going, whether it's the Sweet 16, Elite Eight, or potentially Final Four, that you have your eye on?
What is low to you? What
Let's
counts?
say somewhere between an 8 and a 4.
Okay. I have
Maybe
St. John's in the Final
okay.
Four. I'm
Okay,
gonna go.
that will qualify.
I'm gonna go St. John's. I think Duke is as much as I'm a Duke guy, Kyle, and you know that, and as much as they are incredible, and they have the best player in college basketball right now in Cam Boozer, who can do everything. The injury to Caleb Foster, not having a guy who's got that tournament experience, and not having a veteran, that puts a lot on Caden Boozer's plate to come in there. And look, they still won the ACC championship. They still did. Beat a very, very good Virginia team who I think could go on a run. But without Pat Gungba, I think he's going to miss the Siena game. Who knows if he'll be at 100% if they were to move on. I mean, now that 16 seeds win, I have to preface it with that they're probably in all likelihood going to win. You just don't know, Kyle. That's why we play the games. I think the St. John's team, I look at the second round, Kyle, if they can get past Northern Iowa, and they'll play the winner of Kansas and Cal Baptist. Cal Baptist, by the way, the most electric player you've never heard of. Dominique
Yep.
Daniels is an absolute spark plug. He's
Yep.
an electric factory. That guy is incredible. But setting up a second round game, a revenge game for Zuby Ejiofor going up against Bill Self. They have the bodies to throw at a Darren Peterson. They have the bodies to just smother you up front. And Zuby is playing as well as anybody in college basketball. So I like St. John's to move on to the Sweet 16. And then, Kyle, if you're telling me they can get a Duke team that's got some young players on it, that has bodies you can throw at Cam Boozer, that I'm the front line, the improvement they made at the front line, getting Dylan Mitchell and Bryce Hopkins to go with Zuby Ejiofor was so big because when they run into a power conference team or they run into an SEC team, like Arkansas just kind of out-athleted them last year. Not going to happen this year. Not going to happen this year with this front line. If this Duke team is going to limp into the second weekend, if they make it there, and they have Pat Gungba, who's either not playing or is not 100%, and there's no Caleb Foster, this St. John's team can absolutely beat them. Yes, the front line is great and you need guards. Dylan Darling can be that guy for them. Dylan Darling is taking clutch shots. He's making things happen. He has become the guard. Yeah, absolutely. He's got balls the size of church bells, as Patino says. All year we thought it was going to be Ian Jackson who was going to be the guard for them. It's turned out it's Dylan Darling, and when he's been needed for them, he's come through and defended and made timely shots. I'm just so confident in them. Kyle, they've won 19 of their last 20. And that includes 2 times they put it to Connecticut pretty good. And they put it to Villanova pretty good. Yeah, they had one awful burn the tape game at UConn. That's the only game they've lost since January the 3rd. They lost that game to Providence. It was a wake-up call. They have responded just about every game since then. They're playing as well as anybody. The defense, the tenacity, the size, how they can get after you. I think Rick Pitino saw what happened to him last year and vowed to never happen again have it happen again with this team. I think St. John's goes to the Final Four because how great would it be, Kyle, if we got round 4 of Connecticut and St. John's for the chance to go to the Final Four? And I think St. John's would beat them. So I have the Johnnies. I think this is the year for the Johnnies, man. 19 of the last.
Well, they would play in the Elite Eight. Yeah, they'd play for a chance to go to the Final Four.
But... yeah, the chance to go to the Final Four. 19 of the last 20. This team is on fire and totally curb stomping teams on the way there. I have St. John's in the Final Four.
Yeah, and in my article, I mean, I detailed one team from each region that could go if they're not a 1 seed. Obviously, last year all 1 seed went, but it's only happened now twice since 2008, or since 2000. Yeah, since 2008 was the other time it's happened. So I don't think that will end up happening, Cope. I do think Duke will come out of the East. The one thing that worries me about St. John's, and I do think, and I said this in my article too, I do think there's a scenario where Zuby Ejiofor bullies Cam Boozer and is a problem for him. I mean, just based off the size and experience. I mean, not that Zuby's, exorbitantly tall. I think Cam Boozer is taller than him, but he's a lot of muscle.
4 years in a college weight room.
He's a bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
And he's played for Rick Pitino for 3 of those years and Bill Self for the other. So certainly, I think that's a possibility. But outside of that, and you mentioned some of the guards in Mitchell and Darling, even Ian Jackson, who's still involved. They have good players. Obviously, Bryce Hopkins too. I think it's possible, but the offense worries me because, as you saw in the UConn game, and I know that was maybe a one-off and a burn the tape game, like you said, but that's been kind of the MO of these St. John's teams under Rick Pitino so far in his tenure, is that they've been extremely stout defensively, a lot of ball pressure. They're coming at you. They're playing physical, which is great. And I think there's a certain baseline with that. But to win in March, you do need to keep up with teams on offense. And I don't know if they have the horses to do it with Duke. I think if things go right, it certainly can happen. I certainly don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities, but I did pick Duke in that matchup, and I had St. John's going to the Sweet 16 and beating Kansas. I think Kansas is not built for that. Of course, they could get hot and Peterson could have a good game, Badinga could have a good game, Council, but um, they're gonna have to stop Dominique Daniels first of all. But uh, yeah, I have Duke winning that one. But if there's one team for me, and I got to be completely honest with you, this is a little bit of a boring bracket, Kobe. I really don't have a whole lot of that. I have one versus three. I have three one versus three Elite Eights, and I have one versus two Elite Eight. So a little bit chalky for me. But if there's one team that I will pick, and it's a team that's been pretty streaky coming into the NCAA tournament, I'm gonna go with the Commodores of Vanderbilt
Mm, mm.
because even still, they're also, similar to what we were talking about with Louisville, but their underlying predictive metrics and things of that nature are still pretty good. I still think, as first of all, St. John's was underseeded too. Let's get that out of the way. St. John's probably should have been a four. I think a four is fair after because I think they were on the five line before. I mean, they dismantled. Uh, they beat Seton Hall by 10, and then they dismantled UConn in the Big East championship. I think that had to have counted for something. It obviously did for Purdue when they beat Michigan and they moved up a seed line. Illinois was projected a two for the longest time, so I think they're underseeded. I think Vandy's also underseeded. I mean, ranked 12th in Ken Palm. They're a five seed, seventh offense in the country. Defense a little less at 31st, but this is a team that you saw their maximum potential when they destroyed Florida in the SEC semis. A team that had lost like one game since the beginning of January. Cope, I think, is the same thing that, Florida was doing the same thing that St. John's was doing. But they have a backcourt duo and an experienced one too with Duke Miles as a senior, but also Tyler Tanner. The two of them have been awesome this year. Um, like I said, they destroyed Florida. They lost against Arkansas. It was close until kind of the end. But shoot the free throw really well, 79.3%, fourth in the country. Um, they don't turn the ball over that much, 11th nationally in turnover rate. Rebounding is an issue, but I still think there's if there's anyone with a chance of, in that 4 to 8 seed range, and Arkansas, I would like to talk about too a little bit too, because I think, you know, with their guard play and we've seen what they did and they beat this Vanderbilt team, and they moved up to the four line and they have a little bit of a tougher draw if they make the Sweet 16 if Arizona gets there. Obviously, this is March. Things happen. One seeds can lose in the first round or second round if they play Utah State or Villanova, talking about Arizona. But if they make it to the Sweet 16, they're likely going to be matched up against one of Arkansas, who we just talked about a little bit, or Wisconsin, who also has some good experienced guard play and shot making and Blackwell and Boyd. So I think those are also two teams, but this Vanderbilt team is if they win their game against McNeese, then they'd match up probably unless there's an upset, which I think Nebraska will handle Troy. Troy's a kind of a trendy one. I don't really see it. I'm gonna go with Nebraska winning their first ever NCAA tournament game, which is crazy, but I have Vanderbilt beating Nebraska too. And then they'd match up against Florida again, who they just, they beat by 23, I think it was. And they played one other time this year. I think it was at Vanderbilt. I'm looking right now. Yeah, it was a home game for them. They lost to Florida by 4. Who's a one seed. So I think it's certainly possible that they could pull it off again, even though they just beat them by the final score ended up being 17, but they were up as many as 25 in that game. So yeah, I think Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt's one of those teams as well that you can look at and be okay. Let's could see them making a little bit of a run. Of course, that's not the team that neither of those teams are the ones I picked in the Final Four of that region. Cope, we can get to the Final Four now. You said you have St. John's. Who are your other three?
So this is a bracket I filled out Sunday night, really sleep deprived, really overdosed on caffeine, which is going to bring me into my point here. I'm going to say St. John's in the top left, and I'm shocked that I did not overdose on caffeine quite like once upon a time Matthew Meyer from the Illinois Fighting Illini did, because that's who I'm going to pick to come out. I think if they matched up with Florida, they'd have the size and some potentially better guard play to go. And they have a front line that could rival the great one and go inch for inch, pound for pound with the big one that Florida has. I gave out Florida on the radio, but after I thought about it and I looked at it and I didn't have 3 Celsius in my system, Kyle. I like Illinois. I'm going to go St. John's in the East, Illinois in the South. I'm going to say Arizona in the West because I still, even with some young players, they are so good and so talented and so big. Great coach, terrific point guard in Jaden Bradley, who in the clutch, in the crunch time of the game, there's few players you want more than him. And I'm not just saying that for the buzzer beater he hit against Iowa State the other night. Arizona in the West, and I'm going to go Iowa State in the Midwest to pull an upset over Michigan. I try. Let's just have some fun, man. Let's have some fun. I'm not going to get the whole thing right. Let's have some fun.
Listen, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with some of mine as well because, well, I mentioned Duke. I mentioned Duke beating St. John's, and then I have them beating Michigan State in the Elite Eight. I have Illinois in the Final Four over Florida. Something I agonized over a little bit because I do really like this Florida team. There was a point probably not even a couple weeks ago, maybe even less, that I was maybe going to pick Florida to repeat depending on some of their matchups. But this is not a matchup I like for them, Cope. As you mentioned, tallest team in basketball, college basketball, that is. This Florida team's front line, I mean, when you have a 7'3" guy coming off the bench being your fourth big, it's a pretty big deal, Mitch Hangleton. So I like this Illinois team, though. Like you said, I think they have the guard play to match up with some of Florida's guards who can be good but can be shaky, and Xavier Lee and Boogie Flan. It's a team that has been shooting the ball in Florida a lot better from three over the last few months, but they proved once again this past week that they can be streaky and be bad from downtown. So I really like Illinois, and they'll probably have to get through Houston first, which honestly I think I was going to pick the winner of that game to beat Florida regardless. But I'm going to pick Illinois to beat Houston. I'm going to pick Illinois to beat Florida, go to the Final Four. I do have Arizona for all the reasons you mentioned as well. I mean, Jaden Bradley's someone, every team who wins a championship needs a closer. Jaden Bradley's their closer. He might not be their most talented scorer. I know he was voted Big 12 Player of the Year. I don't know if I necessarily agree, just because there's other players even on Arizona, like Braden Burries, the freshman point guard, who's really, really good in his own right. Pete is their second leading scorer, I think. So he's, incredible and a wing who can be all over the place, and they have defensive anchors, and this is a really good team. I think this is the most complete team, I think, in the tournament. And then I agree with you, Cope. Iowa State over Michigan. And here's why. And I noted this in my article as well. There's only been one team since the start of Bart Torvik's website, which is where I'm getting this information from, which is 2008 was the first season. So there's been one team that is ranked outside of the top 101 or 102, I think it was, because I think in 2021 Baylor was 102nd in this. But there's been one team outside of that has won the NCAA tournament and turned the ball over percentage outside of the top 100, and that would be 2023 UConn. And they were a great team, but that tournament was also weird. You had Purdue losing the first round at FDU. You had Kansas losing in the second round to Arkansas. It was, I mean, UConn was the highest ranked seed as a 4 seed in the Final Four. And those teams were all deserving. But it was a weird year. That is the only time, even the complete outlier year in 2014 of UConn, even the 2011 UConn team that was willed to a victory by Kemba Walker, any of the other potential weird ones that you can think of, and there really hasn't been that many. It's been mostly 1 seeds, and like Villanova is a 2 seed. They all take care of the basketball to a certain level, and this Michigan team is, I think, for the season in like the 190s, 180s, but since the beginning of January, they're in like the 220s. I think that's a problem. And what does that come down to, Cope? They're a huge team too, just like Illinois, just like Florida. They obviously, Axel Landenborg is incredible as a defender and an offensive player. He's their best player. Ade Mara, Morez Johnson. I mean, this team is loaded in the front court, but they don't really have the horses in the backcourt. Ellie Cadeau is solid coming over from North Carolina. He's had a solid year. They had an injury, and I'm blanking on his name right now.
LJ Kaysen.
Yes, Kaysen got hurt in February. Not that he was a starter, but a good seventh man for them that would have been important in this run. Um, they don't have the guards to match up. And Iowa State is a top 5 team in defensive turnover rate. And I have worries about them and their scoring as well. Just because sometimes they can go cold. Joshua Jefferson had a kind of a rough stretch a little bit in conference play. Um, but they have the best 3-point shooter in the country in Iowa State. And Momsen,
Momcilovic.
Momcilovic. I got tongue twisted for a second, but they have an experienced guard in Tamian Lipsey. Obviously, Joshua Jefferson's their leading scorer. And I think it's a bad matchup. I think they're going to turn them over. So that's why I have Iowa State. And then Cope to round off here, and I'll let you round off as well. But I have Duke beating Illinois. I have Arizona beating Iowa State again. And my 2026 national champion is the most consistent team in basketball since the first day of the season, the Arizona Wildcats.
Yeah, no, that's who I'm going to take as well. My original bracket that I wrote down, it was going to be, I thought it'd be cool to get a Florida, Arizona. That was the game that opened the season.
Yep.
That'll be the game that
I
closed
thought about
us.
that. Yep.
Because Florida has been playing very well in its own right. That on a day where Vanderbilt just had it going, I'm not going to hold it against them. Florida, by the way, also did not lose their first conference tournament game, so we don't
Correct.
have to throw that out there and be like we negate them because they lost the first one.
Which Illinois did. So that's a
Which
good
is
note.
why-
Doesn't mean you can't go to the Final Four, though.
Yeah, which is
Can't
why
win the
I'm
Natty.
going to say that Arizona will beat Illinois.
Okay. Fair
I'm
enough.
close to, it was close between St. John's and Illinois, but I ended up taking Illinois. I think this is the year for Brad Underwood to get them there, and at the same time, I think this is the year for TJ Otzelberger to break through and get to the Final Four. He's got Josh Jefferson. This is the last year he's going to have Taman Lipsey. I think this is the year. It sets up that I think in Ryan Odom's first year, that Virginia team will be good. I think they'll beat Tennessee or whoever wins the game that's about to tip off now. But I think Ryan Odom will get there, and he will have championship teams. I think a loss to Iowa State in the Sweet 16 is by no means a bad season for
your
Odom.
first season, especially.
So I think this is the year for Iowa State because I think that Michigan game, yes, there's all that size, and that's terrifying that they can put Morez Johnson and Mara and Lendeborg on the court at the same time. But I think in a big spot when they need it, this was the year that TJ Otzelberger, they can turn them over and they can get to the Final Four. And I just think Arizona, that game where Arizona wrapped up the Big 12 regular season championship, I think Joshua Jefferson was like 2 for 19 in that game, 1 for 18. There's just so much size to bother a guy like that and so many different bodies they can throw in him. And Koa Pete had himself a great game on the defensive end. So I'm going to say Arizona. I just think that's been the best team all year, Kyle.
I 100% agree. And going back to Illinois in the Final Four, I was up at 1 a.m. very heavily debating picking them over Duke. In this game, I just couldn't bring myself to do it because the defense for Illinois, I think at some point, not that it's a bad defense. There's been teams that have won with defense in like the low 20s or high 20s, I guess, in terms of national ranking. Villanova being one of them a couple times. It's certainly possible, but I think if there's any team that's going to catch up to them it's this Duke team who's an incredible defensive team in their own right. Again, health will be a factor. Will the smaller Boozer be a factor? Caden. Yeah, I don't know why I was tripping for a second. Will Caden Boozer be, a viable replacement for Caleb Foster? Remains to be seen, but I think maybe once he gets more game action and he's not coming off the bench, it'll be different. But even if Duke does go to the final, I think Arizona's going to get him there. I think the experience, like you mentioned, Cope, and just the consistency. I mean, Cope, they've lost 2 games all season. They lost at Kansas, even though Darren Peterson didn't play in that game. But
they lost at Allen Fieldhouse.
They lost at Allen Fieldhouse. Yeah. Oh no!
And they blew a lead too. They were winning in the second half.
And they didn't have Cope in that game either. I don't think so. There was that, and then they lost in overtime to Texas Tech I think when JT Toppin was still healthy.
That was a healthy Texas Tech team they
Yes.
lost to. That
Which
I don't
I think
I
that
don't think
healthy
you
Texas
fault you.
Tech team would probably be a 3 seed right now. I think that was a really, really good team.
Yeah, that might
I feel horrible that
that that
Toppin.
that might have been my Final Four team. If
Yeah.
with a healthy JT Toppin, that might have been my Final Four team.
Yeah. I mean, got named first team All-American even though he tore his ACL, a few weeks ago. So, uh, and that was home against Texas Tech, but still, like those are the only those are the only losses that they had this season. Kopi did play in that game, by the way. I was mistaken. He missed a little bit of time earlier in the year, but it's the only games they've lost this entire season. And I think people kind of, not that they wrote them off, but people were enamored by Duke and Michigan and understandably so for a long time. But then this Arizona team snuck right back. I think once they ended up beating Iowa State on that buzzer beater on was it last Friday night? Um, People were probably fully back in. I mean, right now on ESPN, and I think on CBS too, they're the second most picked team in about 20% of brackets. It makes
Which
sense.
it's shocking to me they're not number one.
Well, people got Duke fever, and I understand it, but people have to understand that Duke isn't fully healthy either, and I think they could listen. They could still very well do it. I think this Duke team with the current injuries is still a top 3 team in the country. They're very deserving of a 1 seed, and they can win the national championship. But I think at some point it'll catch up to them.
Yeah,
And
no, I'm right with you. And this is another team in Duke that, again, Kyle, like you're not going to say no to these spectacular freshmen.
yeah,
It's a team that's sub 300 in D1 experience. It worries me every single year. I have Duke fever as much as anybody, Kyle. I still took them to lose in the elite in the Final Four last year to Houston.
me too.
Doesn't mean they didn't have a great year because they kind of disposed of everybody on the way to the Final Four. But
But
you
look what
don't
happened
have
at the end of that game. And
that matters.
that might have been an extreme because that was an absurd game. But those things happen.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you, especially if there's no Gongba, there's no Foster, which unfortunately at the time of this recording don't really have anything concrete other than the fact that Shire said that Gongba is probably out for the Siena game.
I
Maybe
think they
his
said out
chance
for
he
the
comes
first
back.
two. I think they said out for the first 2 games
So
potentially.
it's a great team with the best, okay, the best player in the country. But you go down 2 starters going into when you're going to have to play. And there's another team, Kyle, a 1-point loss to Texas Tech and overtime loss at the buzzer to UNC. Their credentials match up like
Yeah,
pound for pound with Arizona. But Arizona is healthy right now, and there's a chance that Duke is not. Losing 2 starters, I mean, it's not the Cam Boozer can't do it because he's that good, but he's going to have to be Superman against teams that are going to totally key in on him.
yeah,
And he might be bumped up to be playing the 5 now. Like,
yeah.
that's their one. They have size and they have length. They're the second biggest team in the country. But, then it's like, all right, Malik Brown is playing center. We have Cam Boozer at center. So there's a lot of factors that switch around. When you go down 2 starters who not only are playing big minutes and are that good for you, but you're on a team that doesn't have a lot of experience. Caleb Foster's a junior and Gungba's a sophomore. The
Yeah.
guys that have been there and seen it. So
100%.
yeah.
Cope, what a phenomenal time of year that we have right now. This is what it all makes it worth it. Um, listen, that's it for this one. Any final thoughts before we get on here and watch some games tomorrow and Friday?
Yeah, man, looking forward to
Saturday,
being in
Sunday?
Philadelphia tomorrow. Or excuse me, I'll be in Philly tomorrow. I'm gonna go down for media availability in the morning. But me and you are gonna have a 4-pack on Friday.
I won't be there Friday, unfortunately.
Okay, well that's all
But
right. We'll have a
Sunday,
2-pack
I'll have a 2 pack on Sunday.
Sunday. We could get not only a Virginia and a Tennessee matchup would be great. I think UConn and UCLA would be an excellent matchup.
Be incredible, especially if UCLA is fully healthy. They're another team that I think can make a little bit of a run. But
Oh yeah,
Dent should play. Bilodeau, we'll see.
And
I
Dent
think
is
he'll play.
playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah,
That's
he's
going to
been
be a
playing like the best
great
point
game.
guard in the country.
He's got the lowest assist to turn. He has to have the lowest assist to
He
turnover
does.
rate in the
Yeah.
country. The guy's been unbelievable That's going to be a great game.
Yeah.
That's a potential upset, though.
Yeah.
I went back and forth on a little bit. I ended up going with Connecticut, but I went back and forth
Yeah, me
on that
too,
one
just
for a
because
little
of
bit.
health. But if UCLA is healthy, they can certainly win that game if they get there. They have to beat UCF too, but
I think they'll be all right. Shout out
we'll
Johnny
see.
Dawkins, though.
Shout out Johnny Dawkins, indeed. All right.
He won't get fired.
No. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. Thank you to Conor Smith for joining us earlier in this episode to talk Penn basketball. Make sure you follow all the good work he's doing covering this Penn team. But if you want more from us, of course, you know where to find us. But if not, on social media at Big Five Pod on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, audio only versions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, if you're looking at this right now on YouTube, we can see the video version as well. YouTube Shorts, don't forget about YouTube Shorts. We're on there too, of course. We're posting shorts. But other than that, enjoy the best 2 days on the sports calendar every year, Thursday and Friday of March Madness. Don't forget to enjoy Saturday and Sunday too, because they should be pretty awesome. And of course, look out for Cope's coverage on Friday and Sunday, and mine as well on Sunday. But until then, enjoy, and we'll see you.